Hey everyone, and welcome back to Resilience by Faith podcast. My name is Reese, and today I have with us a very special guest. Her name is Michelle Steiner. Thank you so much for being with us today, taking time out your day to one, be on the podcast, but two, share your story. And for those of you that are like, what are we talking about? What are we doing? Or maybe you missed the last episode. I put out a bat signal that I wanted all moms, all walks of life, veteran moms, just every mom, grandma, all the moms to interview. And not in light of Mother's Day, even though we all know Mother's Day is coming up, but just because I wanted to, because I seem to be going through this kick where I'm very fascinated about what happens when you have children and then things change and now we take on new roles, new responsibilities, or in places where we don't have kids and we have pets, animals, that, well, they are our fur babies, so they count too. And I'm going to talk about kind of how society kind of gets in the way sometimes or have expectations for us that we may not have expectations for ourselves. But without getting too far ahead of myself, I want to give Miss Michelle an opportunity to say hello to you guys and to tell you a little bit about herself.
Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Michelle Steiner. I live in Pennsylvania with my husband and our two fur babies,
Yes.
Jack and Sparrow. And I work as a teacher's aide in a school with students that have disabilities and some who don't. And I also work as a writer and speaker and photographer. I have a blog called Michelle's Mission where I write about life with a learning disability. And I get the chance to feature a lot of the walks because I can't drive my photography on my online store.
Wow, that is amazing. So, kind of, you said so much, and I have so many questions I want to ask you, but like, what kind of made you want to get into photography and the blog? Like, how did all that start?
Well, a lot of that started, I know that writing has always been healing for me because when I started, when I was in school, it was really difficult for me. I can just remember I was really frustrated. Anything with learning and then fitting in was really hard.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh, I can't learn or nothing's ever going to work out for me. And my dad would read me stories every night. And he saw a story that I wrote about a dinosaur. And he said, this is really good. And that encouraged me to write more. And whenever I was going through a lot of being bullied and just struggling in life and school, I would do a lot of writing. And I can remember when I found an adult writing group, one of my friends told me you should really write about life with a learning disability. And I was very young; I was in my late teens at that time, and I said, "Oh, I don't know about that." I said, "That's a little personal, and I just want to run away from it." And I wrote some really bad poetry and some other things. But when I got married and we bought our house and I couldn't open up the door because of my limited hand dexterity, I wrote about that. The Mighty was having a call for people to write about what's a seemingly easy task for other people, but it's hard with your disability. And I responded and I thought, I'm going to write about this. I'm not being able to unlock my door. And I got a really good feedback. So it encouraged me to write other articles, get other things published. And it also gave me the courage to start my own blog where I could write about just life with a learning disability and be able to feature some photography as well.
Yes, and you mentioned this a couple of times. You have a learning disability, but does it have like a certain name to it?
Yes, I have dyscalculia, which is a math learning disability.
Uh-huh.
I really struggle with how numbers work. I also have visual perception issues, but that's in my brain, not in my eyes. And I also have limited hand dexterity in both of my hands.
Right. Okay. And what age did all of this come about, or is it congenital, or kind of like at what age did the teachers make a comment, reach out to your parents, or did you start to notice, hey, this is really a struggle for me, and let's figure out what this is?
Well, when I was 5 years old, I went to kindergarten. My preschool teacher could see that I was really struggling too, and she recommended holding me back. But my parents thought, okay, she'll learn because you can't see my disability. But when I got into kindergarten, my teacher saw that I was really struggling with counting, visual perception. My hand coordination was off. And I also struggled, excuse me, with anything with math. That was the big factor too. And I can remember doing dot to dot pages when I was really little. And I thought, oh, I did this right. And I got it back and it wasn't correct. And luckily, I had a great set of parents. When my teacher recommended that I get evaluated for having one, my parents were on board with it. They also supported me throughout all those years of school. They went to every meeting. They worked with the staff, my mom especially. I got a chance to run into one of my first learning support teachers, and she told me, we just love talking with your mom because I would call her up if I had a concern. And she'd call me if we had a concern or she had a concern. And both of them would just really work together for my benefit. And I just can't say enough nice things about having a supportive mom and a supportive dad throughout a lot of those years because it was difficult.
Yes, definitely. And Lord, I know I haven't been diagnosed with anything as far as
Mm-hmm.
learning goes, but math was not my favorite just in general. It just wasn't. I think not until I got to college and we went
Mm-hmm.
through geometry with the triangles and sine and cosine. That I really enjoyed. But when they taught that in high school, I couldn't connect. I just couldn't. I tried to stray away from math
Mm-hmm.
as much as possible. Fast forward, now I'm in medicine where we have to do math, and you have to
Right.
go through a lot of sciences and different things. But people are kind of
Mm-hmm.
surprised when I say math was not my strong suit because it wasn't. I think I did enough and I passed and I put my best foot
Mm-hmm.
forward to get through it, and then we just moved on. We were just like, "Thank you, Lord. Let's move on."
And
Like,
that's really been a lot of the key things with me too. I
right.
would go in even at the college level, and I would have a class with math when we tried to do it, and I would fail every test. Then I went to tutoring and office hours, and luckily, a lot of the staff that I worked with really knew that. Excuse me, I was trying my best,
Right.
and they passed me and I made sure that I didn't do a lot of curriculums that involved a lot of math, a lot of science, because I knew that was going to set myself up for even more failure.
Right.
But yeah, sometimes you just do what you have to do and you move along, and that's what we, yep.
Yes. Now, like, to get back on the topic that we wanted to talk about
Hmm.
today, because that's important too. I think that would be a whole nother podcast episode if I would have you come back to talk about that, because that's
Awesome.
a great topic, and one that I don't think a lot of people shine a lot of light on. So I'm glad and I'm thankful that
Hmm.
you shared your story, because you hear about dyslexia and now the hot topic is
Yeah.
autism and different things
Hmm.
a lot, but I never met anybody with dyscalculia, and I want to make sure that people are able to recognize the signs. Or if you're listening to
Hmm.
this episode, even though we're not talking about that today, maybe you can start a Google search. Maybe you can make sure that, hey, your kid isn't lazy, or maybe they really are trying their best
Right.
and this is what they're struggling with. I would love to have you come back to talk about that because I think it's very important. Yeah.
Would
But
love to.
yes. And then with the kiddos, so you have fur babies, but kind of
Yeah.
like, was there an expectation when you were coming up for you to have kids, or was it at a certain age or a certain point in your life where society seemed to put pressure on you? Or maybe sometimes we put pressure on ourselves. Sometimes you feel a way or different depending on where you are in life and what you want
Right.
in your life. But it seems like we all have this ingrained fairy tale from the time that we're young. They start ingraining it in us that you're going to be a mom and we're going to take care of the baby. You're going to clean house, like with the what do you
Hmm.
call those things? The little kitchen sets that they get the kids and
Right.
the baby dolls. Yes, they're starting to train us at a very young age, and I just wonder, like, at what point in life did you're just like, no, that's not what I want for my life, or did something occur?
One of the things that was a factor, I grew up playing with baby dolls. I dreamed of having that whenever I was younger.
Yeah.
But I can remember a lot of times I had a lot of broken relationships.
Mhm.
And the thing that was really hard, I didn't get married until I was in my 30s. And by the time I got married and I met the right person, they didn't want to have, my husband is the one that did not want to have a family.
Uh-huh.
And I thought to myself, I'm okay with that because I found the person that I wanted to be with, and I still have a wonderful experience with enriching the lives of children. I work every day in a school where I get to see a lot of kids that need that support. I get that chance to love on my nieces when I get to see them, and I also get to see my fur babies as well. And I think that is enough for me to be able to feel that. But yes, there is always that societal pressure. Everyone asks me, "Oh, when are you going to have kids?" And I just a lot of times just say, "Oh, well, we have fur babies," and we try to um, just not really go into a whole lot of that because a lot of times people that's what they think is the norm.
Mhm.
And I love my husband, and there was other relationships I was in, and these people wanted to have kids, and they were definitely not the right person for me. And I think if I really wanted to have a family, I probably would have ended up having kids with them, but I wouldn't have the relationship that I do now with my husband.
Yes. And I think that's very important because nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not throwing a wrench in anybody's life. If
Right.
if that has occurred, children are blessings and we just
Yes.
carry on in life.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of people who maybe high school sweethearts, or maybe things happen earlier
Mm-hmm.
in life, or maybe we do get married, but the marriage doesn't work out. And out of the marriage, they had kids.
Right.
But you waited for the right person. What did that look like when you were kind of seeing everybody else maybe that you went to high school with get married and different things and you still wasn't married? Because I'm almost 30 years old. This year will be my 30th. And I get asked that question a lot myself, and I'm sure a lot of other people can relate. When are you getting married? That's the number one. And then when are you
Mm-hmm.
going to have kids? Are you talking to anyone?
Right.
And it's so annoying. I think people don't
I
have
know.
no regard.
It it was really hard. I mean, I'm not really, I don't see a lot of people I went to high school with. I mean, I just never really had a connection. And a lot of my friends that I do hang out with, a few of us actually, we got married within 6 months of each other. Uh, and some of them are older and have, are married, and some are single. And that's just not either, or in a relationship too. So, I mean, it's kind of unique. None of us, well, except maybe some of the moms, they have a couple kids, but most of us in a lot of the age category, we don't, we decided, okay, we just don't want to have kids. So I mean, that is a nice thing because there's not that it's just a different connection that we get to have. But I can remember how hard it was before I got married, though, because I would go to showers for family, and everybody would come up, and I'm in a big Italian family, so I would have a lot of my aunts and my grandmas, and when are you getting married? And if I remember I had a boyfriend at one point, and my grandma was wanting me to get married as a as an older teenager, and talking about weddings and getting married. And I swear, the day I was born, they were planning my wedding out for me. But so it was, that was hard though. I can just remember sitting at the showers and people saying, well, you have to put your feelings aside. And I never exactly, I agreed that you should go and we need to be happy for other people, or we need to at least go and congratulate and celebrate other people. But I couldn't, I never thought that it was beneficial though for me to lie to myself and say, oh, I, I wish that was me, or I can understand, or deny that, yeah, I'm definitely happy somebody found the right person. I would never want to take that away from somebody. But I think it was also really hard too, because I was wondering, well, when is my person going to come along? Or I'm kind of sad and having someone ask me for the millionth time when you're going to get married. And that was tough. And I can remember with my ex, it was really difficult after we broke up. Um, it was hard, especially while actually we were breaking up. I mean, the relationship wasn't working out. He really wasn't accepting me having a disability. I can remember when we were breaking up, he told me that I could really drive if I wanted to, and he was tired of taking me places. And there was just some people that told me they didn't want to be with me for having a disability. And I just remember just really feeling heartbroken. And I just prayed at one point and I said, God, do not send me anybody until it is the right person.
Right.
And when I let go of that, I focused a lot more on myself. And when I met my husband, that was just something that I couldn't have planned. And God had so many things that there was just so many little signs that came about that He answered my prayer.
Yes. And I think it is hard because of the societal norms and the
Hmm.
expectations that parents, family, friends put on you, they
Yeah.
would have settled to be with someone or to get married to someone just because that's what other people wanted
Yeah.
for them. And in order to feel accepted or in the in crowd, they just
Hmm.
would have done that. It's very hard to explain to other people that, yeah, I just haven't found the right one yet. And for other people to kind of give you a look like, do you really like you could just be married? And I'm like, yeah, but to the wrong one. And, and
Yeah.
all the things that follow that. Um, I think it's very important for you to share your story because a lot of women, I think I saw a
Hmm.
statistic recently on TikTok about how more females are single nowadays because the dating pool is not the best
Right.
right now. And if you could give any type of advice to other people out there listening, such as myself, climbing the ladder of age and
Hmm.
not seeing their person come apart, or maybe they found their person but they don't know if they want to have kids, or maybe they choose not to, kind of dealing with those feelings internally of, am I doing the right thing? Is it okay that I don't want to have kids? Because some people say, oh, you're selfish because you don't want to have children. Like, what would you say to those people kind of dealing with that torment internally?
I think you have to know what you want and what is important to you, and to see if that is a factor. And certainly, I know people that they wanted to have kids and they had some broken relationships.
Mhm.
And one of the things when they were seeing somebody after their divorce was, my family is the most important thing to me. And they knew that. And that person found the right person, and they had some children from a previous relationship too, and she was able to have a little boy. And but that was important to her.
Mhm.
And you have to know what's really important to you and what's going to be that deal breaker. And if the deal
Mhm.
breaker is having children, then uh, you have to make sure that you communicate that with somebody. Maybe not on the first date, but whenever you get into talking about how you want your future to look. And the same goes if somebody doesn't want to have a child,
Mhm.
or if you do, and you're presented in a relationship and the person doesn't want that.
Right.
I think it's just really important to have that open communication, that you're able to talk about stuff like that, and that it's what you want to do with your life. I think sometimes what would be selfish is if you had a child and you knew that that person didn't want one, or you did it because somebody wanted you to do that, and expect them to be on that same page with you. And that's my thing. I think it's just being true to yourself, knowing what it is you want, and being able to communicate that with somebody.
Yes, and now, I mean, definitely looking back on life, um,
Hmm.
with the conversations you and your husband have had surrounding that, was
Hmm.
it just like, okay, we got married and you stated this, and he's just like, yeah, I don't want to have a family. Was it kind of like, okay, and then we just moved on, or was it kind of like, did y'all kind of have a couple of conversations about it again and revisit it, or was it just like, I released this, I let this go?
I can remember it was whenever it was a couple years into our relationship before we got married, because
Uh-huh.
we did have a long engagement as well. He didn't even know at one point if he wanted to get married, but we let that worked itself out, because I could see he was committed to me and he wasn't running around. But I can remember he talked to me. He goes, I don't think I want to have kids. And I said, that's all right. And the reason we talked about that 2 years into our relationship was, whenever we first met, I was living at home with my parents after being out on my own for a while. And I was back in school, and I was so focused on school. And my husband at the time was at one point he was long distance. He was living somewhere else
Mhm.
and was working, and then his job eventually took him back to where I was at, and he was living in his own place. And at that point I got my own apartment, and we were we were a couple years into our relationship, and he told me about that because he wanted to give me that option that if I really felt that I wanted to have a family,
Mhm.
then it would have to be with somebody else. And I just loved the clear communication that he had. And by that point, I knew he was the one for me. I just knew he was. We were having fun. We were enjoying our life together. And we talked about that way before we got married.
Yes. Now, when you got married, how old were you?
I was 35.
35. Okay. See, people, it doesn't have to be younger, or it doesn't have to be, at
Right.
12 or 14. It can definitely be anywhere in life. I think the saying that I used to hear the most when I was younger is that you have your whole life for that, or you don't have to rush this. You have time. And I don't think that that actually stuck in my mind, and I actually comprehended what they were saying, the elders in my life, until now. Like, you do have
Yeah.
time and it doesn't have to be rushed. I would definitely, this is always a fun question to ask. When you were coming up, what age did you tell yourself you wanted to be married by and have kids by, or just be married in general? And do you think that the timing that everything did take place was the correct timing, with of course, with the right person? And do you feel like, looking back on your maturity level, you would have been ready for it if it had come sooner?
I really didn't have a specific age or a specific time period. I think probably as a 18, I probably would have wanted to get married to somebody right away. And luckily, I had people in my life that told me, no, why don't you wait until you know who you are? A lot of older women that had some relationships, and even some friends who were older too. What they did when I was a late teenager and in my 20s and even now, they wanted to develop me as a person.
Right.
So we would do art museums, we would go on vacations, we would have experiences. I would still be in relationships with other people that weren't really working out, but they really encouraged me to know who I was. A
Mhm.
lot of it was to go to school first, so I had that education that in case something, if I got married and it didn't work out, that I would have a backup plan to be able to take care of myself.
Mhm.
And I think in my early 20s, whenever I was living out on my own, I think that was really good for me because I needed to have that skill set on how to take care of myself and not
Mhm.
depend on another person.
Right.
And I can't drive because of my disability. So I was able at that time to be able to walk around where I needed to go, take the bus, and my parents were helpful. Now my husband takes me where I need to go, and I have a sweet coworker that can take me home at the end of the day.
Mhm.
But I honestly think being single saved me from a lot of things. And
Mhm.
during those times, I was waiting for, it wasn't that I was somebody that they couldn't find anybody.
Right.
I was waiting for the right person to come along.
Mhm.
And I think for me, that worked out a lot better. I know other people that automatically got married when they were really young, right out of college, and they ended up divorced. And some of them have had multiple marriages. And I just think that those are the ones that were asking me, when are you going to get married? Waiting was really a good thing.
Yes. What do you think that what do you think the most important thing your husband has taught you about yourself through being married to him?
I think a lot of times what he taught me a lot with is how to be flexible sometimes because we have totally opposite personalities.
Yeah.
I'm more planned about things. I'm somebody that I like to know, what are we doing? What is our structure? What are we doing with this? If we're going on vacation, I research the kind of hotel and I research everything. I have the menu down pat. And he is more kind of go with the flow.
Right.
And I think a lot of times what that has helped me learn how to do sometimes is
Mhm.
to be able to relax a little bit, that
Right.
things are going to work out. I don't have to know everything. And I think sometimes with me, though, he, uh, I think with him, he has also learned, okay, well, let's look into this. Let's see what is out there. Let's try to see how this can work out too.
Yes, that's important. I'm much like you. I have to know, what are we doing? Where are we going? At what time? Do we have things planned out? Or especially if
Hmm.
we go on trips, are we doing excursions? And if we are, what days, what time, so that I can plan this around this. Yeah, relaxing and just going with the flow is definitely not my forte at all. But I'm pretty sure I could learn. I could learn.
Yeah.
Definitely. I would definitely say, when I've listened to other people who are in the entertainment business or other pastors,
Hmm.
they have their spouse with them, and they talk about, like, when you get married, that's not the same person you'll be married to in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years. People change throughout the marriage, and y'all learn how to grow together, and you learn how to communicate. But one of
Hmm.
the things that you mentioned from the very beginning, even before you guys were married, that he was a great communicator. I would definitely say, over the years, how have you guys continued to stay together? Because staying married is a choice, but also learning how to navigate those seasons where you are growing or he's growing and things are changing and your relationship looks a little bit different. What role does communication play in that?
That has actually been one thing. He was good at communicating. He didn't want to have a family, but communication's been something we've had to kind of work and grow on a lot in our marriage. I'm more of a talker. He's a little more quieter. We've had to learn this, and sometimes life does get very busy. We have two opposite work schedules,
Mhm.
and sometimes it can get a little hard. We'll get our signals crossed, and that usually is when uh, sometimes we might have an argument or something. So I think the best thing we try to do is to sit down at night when he gets off work, and we try to talk, and we'll try to go and address, okay, what are we doing this weekend? What is happening? Oh, what does need to get done? And just make it, but it's being intentional about making that time to talk to each other. We even did a calendar system where we would put on the calendar what is going on, like for getting stuff done. That it's just having those expectations, I think, is just really important.
Yes, it is, and I like the calendar idea. That is so
Hmm.
intentional, but definitely because you already know, like you mentioned, y'all have different schedules, but making the time and being intentional to hear each other out, to make sure communication is still there, we
Hmm.
don't have any problems. That's so important. Um, I do want to ask you, are
Hmm.
some books, what are some podcasts, some tools that you use during your single time to kind of get to learn who you are better, or that or to improve on any area that you needed to improve on?
Well, back whenever I was single, there wasn't a lot of podcasts with that,
Mhm,
but I can just remember a lot of just a lot of books that really helped. A lot of self. There was a lot of like the psychology ones where you had the different kinds of personality tests. I think that helped.
mhm,
But I also think if I could think of one book that really stood out from that time period, The Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren, because what that showed was God had a purpose for my life. Even if I'm single, if I'm married, if I'm divorced, if if I wanted to become a mom, or if I wanted to have fur babies,
mhm.
God had a plan and a purpose for my life and everything. And I think that is what was really, I can give all the glory to him for that.
Yes. Yes, and I think it's so hard to lose sight of the fact that he is sovereign over all things. And I think
Mm-hmm.
us worrying and this anxiety and the stress that we put on ourselves, um, really, when you look at it from that perspective, is really all for nothing,
Mm-hmm.
really, because his plan is still going to be in action no matter what. There's nothing we can do to deter
Right.
the plan that he has for us. And that goes
Mm-hmm.
back true to the statement, what's for you will be for you. And we just have to learn to kind of accept it and be okay there and
Mm-hmm.
live there. I think that's a wonderful place to kind of to land. I thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom, but also letting us in and be able to ask you questions about this topic, because honestly, A lot of people I don't think would have came on. I probably would have got a lot of other people who have kids or traditional family, bonus
Mhm.
mom, adopted mom, different things like that. But I'm so happy that you still decided to sign up and come on the show because I feel like your story is just as important. And I think there are other people who identify more with that because a lot of people don't want to have kids anymore. And I think we're seeing
Mhm.
things shift in a different down a different avenue a lot in the society that we live in, but there are still like grandmas and moms still around
Mhm.
pressuring like when are you going to win, and that this episode will let people know, take a deep breath, just give them comfort and let them know ultimately it's your decision whether you want to or not, but regardless, God is sovereign. He still has a
Yep.
plan. You're not failing at life, and it's okay.
Mhm.
And I think this episode is so important, not just for me, but for my audience. I know a lot of my friends are in the same category I'm in right now, and it's okay. It's fine. It's fine. So I thank you so much for coming on and just being transparent, but also giving us hope in the same breath and letting us know that hey, it's all right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, definitely. Before you go, if my audience wanted to connect with you or if you have any platforms online, where can they be able to support you, to connect with you in any way?
You can find me on my blog, michellesmission.net, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well.
Okay, guys, please, you heard that. Please go follow, support, give feedback, send her a message, let her know what you got from this episode. But until next time, guys, I'll see you in 2 more weeks. Y'all take care and be safe out there. Thank you, Michelle, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.